Now let's start with today's story. Some people are simply too blind to recognize the worth of what they have, until it's gone. Only then do they cry about how unfair it is, realizing too late that some mistakes can never be undone. True justice is watching them suffer, forced to accept that impossible means exactly what it says. When Ryan, 28, and Laura, 25, realized they had been exclusively dating for over 3 months, they decided to take the next step. They found a nicer apartment, combined the best furniture from their separate places, and moved in together. For nearly 2 years, life was perfect. They fit together effortlessly, their bond growing stronger with time. Ryan was happy. He loved Laura, and from everything she did, he believed she loved him just as much. Each of them had a lot of friends who'd all become friends and acquaintances with each other, and that's how it had been for the last couple of years when Ethan Grant Sullivan, shoved his way into their lives and started putting his "I don't give a shit whose girl you are" moves on Laura. Ryan saw and picked up on it at a couple of parties and said something about it to Laura, but she made excuses, like he's just a really friendly guy. And he's like that with everybody, Ryan. Or stop being so insecure. And the old standby, "You know you're the only man I love." Holding her at arm's length, Ryan had looked into her eyes and said, "Listen to me, Laura. The guy is a snake. He's gaming you. I'm telling you, plain and simple. He's angling to get into your pants. You do what you want, Laura, but you damned well remember that I warned you. Also remember this, I don't cheat and I won't stay with anyone who cheats on me, and I don't take prisoners." At that, he released his hold on her shoulders and left the party. Ryan, 3 years older, much more experienced and world-wise, knew better. Ethan wasn't like what she said with him at all. In fact, when no one else was paying close attention, he was arrogant and disrespectful toward him. In fact, oftentimes, quite recently, he'd bordered on contemptuous. Since they'd had no personal confrontations, Ryan's natural suspicions forced him to realize that something had happened to give Ethan reason to act and feel contemptuous toward him. Instinctively knowing what it most likely was, Ryan had gone on high alert, but without proof. He hadn't made any accusations to Laura. Ryan, a former Special Forces member, seriously considered giving Ethan a once-in-a-lifetime private and final lesson in respect and social etiquette, but he knew that, if he were caught, his lethal skills would put him in prison. So he just smiled and, in a quiet voice, told Ethan to go screw himself and to keep his distance from Laura. 6'3", Ethan just snorted, looked down at Ryan, dismissively, then laughed out loud as he turned and walked away. Ryan never said a word to Laura, but, by her demeanor, it was soon clear to Ryan that she knew of his confrontation with Ethan. Knowing that there was only one way that she could know of it, Ryan felt the sadness of loss grow and spread like a fungus. A couple of weeks had gone by since the incident with Ethan when Laura gave Ryan a sad tale about getting a call at work that her Aunt Maria was sick and had asked her to go spend the coming weekend with her. Laura wasn't much of an actress and, from the nervous excitement in her demeanor, Ryan was sure that her actual plan was to spend the weekend shacked up with good time Ethan, the guy who'd been hitting on her and is very likely already screwing her. That explained his blatant disrespect for Ryan, her unsuspecting fiancé. When Ryan asked Laura for her aunt's phone number, to be able to call and talk with her, Laura looked reluctant and then told him that Aunt Doris didn't have a phone. When he followed up by asking how she knew that her aunt was sick, she hesitated for just a second before mumbling that her aunt had had her neighbor call to ask Laura to come and spend the weekend with her. Considering the tension there'd been between the two of them during the previous 2 weeks, there was no way that Laura shouldn't have been acutely aware that Ryan was watching her and wondering about her commitment to him and their upcoming marriage, but she'd been very careful. 3 times she'd asked her supervisor for the afternoon off, twice for premarital counseling, and once to keep an appointment with her gynecologist. None of them had been actual appointments, but there'd been no questions raised and Ryan didn't know that she'd left work, or what she'd spent those afternoons doing, or who she'd done it with. Each time, after leaving work, she'd gone straight to Ethan's apartment and spent the afternoons doing wild and exciting things in his bedroom. Wild, exciting things and afternoons that Ryan would never know about. Laura realized that Ethan wasn't nearly the lover that Ryan was, or even close to being as well equipped, but he was someone different from Ryan and just being with him. When she knew that she shouldn't be screwing him for 3 or 4 hours, when she knew it was wrong, thrilled her. It all felt so exciting and dangerous. When they were together, she screwed his brains out and then she went home to Ryan. She'd feel an insane sense of exhilaration when she realized that Ryan couldn't tell that she'd just spent the entire afternoon cheating on him and screwing Ethan. As much as she loved Ryan, Laura could see her extracurricular sexual activities continuing long after they were married. 4 years. As long as she was careful. She'd thought about it and decided that it would probably be with someone with a bigger meat than Ethan's. and maybe even longer and bigger than Ryan's. Laura had done a lot of online reading, and it was only those who got stupid and careless who got caught, and she made a vow to herself to never let herself get careless. She'd never lose her loving husband, or give up the excitement of having a lover to screw her when Ryan wasn't looking. Late Friday morning, she kissed Ryan goodbye and told him that she was going to miss being with him. Seeing the look of excitement in her eyes, Ryan knew that she was lying. He'd seen that same look when she came home from work 3 different times, too, like a kid bursting with a wonderful secret. Not one of those nights had she approached him to have sex, and because he'd instinctively suspected what she'd done, he'd made no sexual overtures to her. A feeling of overwhelming sadness came over him because he knew that, as she walked out the door, with a noticeable spring in her step, everything he'd hoped for, dreamed of, and planned for with Laura was at its end. As he watched her smile, wave, and drive away from the apartment, he felt something inside of himself that had been beyond beautiful begin to shrivel, wither, and die. Ryan's vision suddenly blurred and he felt like crying, like just sitting down and bawling his heart out, but he refused to. He just wouldn't. Using the first knuckle of the index finger on each hand, he swept the tears away, locked his jaws together and, through clamped teeth, he choked out a softly whispered, "Goodbye, Laura. Goodbye, my wife, who will never be, because I'll never marry a cheating 304. It was an incredible fluke of serendipitous circumstance that a close personal friend of Ryan's happened to be drinking coffee at his dining room table by the window of his second-floor apartment when Laura pulled her car into a visitor's parking space on the backside of his apartment building. Luke and Ryan knew each other like close brothers because they trained together and then served together for 2.5 years in the same unit in the mountains of Afghanistan. It was because of their history and closeness that he knew Laura and she knew him, but he was sure that she didn't know that he'd recently moved to this complex. Even if she did, he knew that she damned well had no business being here or anywhere near this rough neighborhood without Ryan, and that fact had Luke's fully focused attention. He'd only just set his cell phone to video and begun recording what he was seeing when he saw the a-hole, Ethan Sullivan, pull his car in and park it next to Laura's. He continued recording as Ethan got out of his car, walked to Laura. He pulled her into his arms and gave her a hot kiss, while she wrapped her body around him and tried to outdo his kiss. She was smiling a promise of better things to come, when they reluctantly parted to get her suitcase from her car and put it in the trunk of his car, next to his own 2 suitcases. After Laura closed and locked her car, she quickly went around and got into Ethan's car and they left the lot. But not before Luke, who, like Ryan, both Special Forces snipers, had zoomed in on Ethan's license plate. They'd been standing no more than 30 feet away from his window, so the iPhone 4 video that Luke shot was crystal clear and detailed. He immediately called Ryan and told him what he'd just seen, where her car was, and that he'd gotten a video of the 2 of them making the suitcase transfer before leaving her car parked in the visitor's parking area of his complex. After hanging up, Luke texted and also emailed the unedited video to Ryan. It was crystal clear. Even on the small screen of his phone, Ryan recognized Laura and Ethan. He felt heart-sick when he saw them kissing and mauling each other. Their comfortable familiarity confirmed that this was far from being their first clandestine meeting. They'd clearly been together enough times that it had become second nature, but now they were making a weekend of it. Ryan downloaded the video to a jump drive, burned a couple of video discs, and then played one of them on their 65 television screen. It was as if he was standing in Luke's dining room, actually watching Laura and Ethan from his window. Ryan felt sick to his stomach. Actually, seeing it and knowing for certain that Laura was betraying him, and had, in fact, betrayed him by lying to get to where the video showed her actively betraying him, on her way to a weekend of screwing Ethan. He now had no doubt that she'd already screwed him several times before they planned their weekend getaway. At least 3 of those times being when she'd come home from work with that cat that ate the canary look on her face and the "I just got screwed but you don't know it" look in her eyes. As those thoughts flashed through his mind, he growled to himself, "How the hell could she ever think that I'm that stupid? All she's done is prove that she's as stupid as he is. Well, I warned them both." Grinding his teeth, Ryan left the disc in the player to use it as a final presentation when Laura returned from her weekend of being Ethan's bitch, expecting to pick up where she left off being engaged to get married to Ryan. He made another disc to leave in one of the boxes that she'd find packed and ready for her to take her belongings to wherever she's going to live when she learns that she doesn't live here anymore. Unless she wants to fight it and have copies of the disc sent to every one of their friends, co-workers, and family members above the age of 12. On Friday night and Saturday morning, the 4 calls that Ryan made to the cell phone that he'd gone to Walmart and bought for Laura went straight to voicemail. When he called Luke, at around noon on Saturday, Laura's car was still parked in the same place and hadn't been moved. In mid-afternoon, Laura finally called and, To explain not answering her phone, she gave Ryan a bullshit story about not having cell phone reception at her aunt's house and said that when she'd driven into town, she was able to get cell phone service and had seen that he'd called several times and left a half-dozen messages. She told him how much she missed him and that she was looking forward to getting home. Then she said that her aunt wasn't doing that well and that she might not be back Sunday night after all because blah, 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 but could possibly be staying and not get home until late on Tuesday. Her last words were, "I love you, honey. Here's hoping I see you sooner than Tuesday." By now, Ryan was burning. He called another of his friends who owned and operated a roadside emergency repair and towing service. Telling him where her car was, he had him flatbed it back to his complex and place it in her parking space in front of their apartment, just as if it had been parked there. He cursed himself for not having a spare set of keys to the car so he could have driven it back. While her car was being picked up, Ryan stopped at Walmart and arranged with the meat department manager to have their night crew save 40 of the heavy-duty boxes that their pre-packaged meats come packed in, saying that he'd pick them up early on Sunday morning. When he came to pick up the boxes, one of the employees wheeled one of the 2 large carts of boxes out to their parking lot and set them on the curb, right next to Ryan's van. Ryan started removing the partitions from the boxes, so he could fit 3 boxes together in a smaller space before loading them into the van that he'd borrowed from his sister. It was the only way he could load and carry all of the 40 boxes in one trip. When he was finished, he used the cart that he'd wheeled the boxes out on to take all the partitions he'd removed back into the store to the guy who'd brought the other cartload of boxes out to the van. He thanked the guy, who said, "No problem," and that he'd take the coated cardboard partitions to the machine that crushes and packs all their empty boxes. After he'd carried all the boxes into his and Laura's apartment, Ryan returned Marilyn's van and went back to the apartment and started packing Laura's shit. He was determined that, by the time she got back, every single thing she owned would be separated from his, boxed and stacked by the door. She called late Sunday afternoon to say that she was sorry, but she'd have to stay with her aunt for at least another day, but more likely 2. She was sorry. She loved him and was looking forward to being back home and in his arms. Ryan told her that he understood the situation perfectly and for her to not worry her pretty head about it. Punching the button that ended the call, he continued packing her shit. When Ryan was done sorting her stuff from his before packing, boxing, and stacking it, he left 2 bottles of her douche and a morning after pill on a bright red plastic picnic plate, sitting at eye level on top of the box that was closest to the door, right where she couldn't possibly miss seeing them and understanding their significance. Under the bottles of douche and the morning after pill was a folded note telling her to call Ethan and remind him of what he'd warned him would happen if he didn't leave her alone, and to tell him to buy some good running shoes and start using them, and to pray that they don't wear out before Ryan finds him. Laura called twice more during her absence, using the same bullshit story about having no cell phone coverage. Ryan let her think she was getting away with snookering him, and each time, her calls were short because she said she had to get back because her aunt, blah, 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 and she was gonna get some more sex. As if Ryan screwing her 8 to 10 times a week hadn't been enough for her. On Tuesday night, Ryan was watching for her arrival from the window of a darkened room. After a very long wait, he was thinking that he should call her and ask how long before she'd be home. She hadn't known that she had no car until she got back to Luke's apartment complex, and so her arrival back at the apartment would certainly be delayed from having to deal with that. Just as he laughed and said screw her, his phone rang. It was Luke. "Hey, Ryan." They pulled in about 10 minutes ago and Laura went nuts when she saw that her car wasn't where she left it. "The office is closed and the 2 people I saw her stop and ask about it in the lot just shook their heads. I guess they gave up on her car because they didn't call the cops to report it stolen. Too bad. That would have been rich. There'd have been a police record of where it was parked, when she parked it, and where it was supposedly stolen from. Anyway, they just pulled out. If he's bringing her straight home, you can expect her in about half an hour. Keep cool and don't do anything stupid." "Okay." Ryan thanked his friend and went to take a piss before repositioning himself a few feet back from the darkened window, where he had an unobstructed view of the street for 5 buildings in either direction. It was 9 p.m. on Tuesday night when Laura got back from her long and exciting but tiring weekend of sex with Ethan Grant Sullivan, the exciting new local stud with a practiced line of shit and a decent tongue, to discover that her car wasn't where she'd left it. A bolt of fear went through her. How was she supposed to explain getting home from her stay with her aunt if she didn't have her car? If her car had broken down or been stolen, why hadn't she called Ryan to come and get her? The complex's office was closed, so she couldn't check with them to see if they'd had it towed. The 2 people they saw in the parking lot knew nothing about her car. Damn, she screamed. Of all things, how can this be happening? What am I going to tell Ryan? Laura was completely off balance, but she had to go home, so she concocted a story of her car having been stolen from a gas station when she stopped to fill up, just before she got home. She didn't think about not having a police report on her vehicle having been stolen, nor did dimwit Ethan, who'd screwed her for the last 4.5 days. With her stolen car story in mind, she had Ethan drop her off 2 doors down from the apartment, where she quickly got out of his car and snatched her suitcase from the trunk. She figured that would give Ethan time to drive off before Ryan knew she was home and wouldn't see whose car she'd come home in. She grabbed her case and she walked slowly to the front door and let herself in, not noticing that her car was parked in its usual space in front of the apartment. What she saw when she swung the door open and stepped into the brightly lighted living room made her heart skip a beat and sink. There were rows of stacked boxes on both sides of the door and, right next to the door, the 2 bottles of her Summer's Eve douche were sitting on a bright red picnic plate, on top of one of the stacks of brown boxes, along with what it only took her a couple of seconds to realize was a morning after pill. There was a folded sheet of paper under the bottles, and the pill that she took to be a note of condemnation that would explain the boxes. Looking across the box with the pill and the bottles of douche on it, she saw Ryan standing in the dining room doorway with a cold, grim expression on his face. Her heart felt like it dropped through her stomach as she realized that she'd just lost what she valued more than anything she'd ever had. Ryan, He cut her off, instantly, in the coldest and hardest voice she'd ever heard, saying, "Laura, don't say a word. Just take your shit and get the hell out. Go move in with your 4-day weekend sex, that is, if he actually wants a cheap hooker who'd do what you did. You stayed for 2 extra days, so he must be bigger than me, or he does some things better than I do. Whatever it is, you thought it was worth staying 2 extra days to get more of it. In any case, it doesn't matter because we were done before you walked out the door. I know you think I'm stupid, but I already knew that you've been screwing him and what your real plans were for this weekend. By the way, I saw the way you were walking after Ethan dropped you off. Did your sick aunt get screwed like you?" Tears of grief were streaming from Laura's eyes as Ryan, in a cold, hard, and bitter voice, continued. "Remember the engagement and wedding ring set you loved so much and wanted? I bought it and have it almost paid for, but you can forget about ever wearing it. And just to think, I was going to marry a lowlife piece of trash like you. You make me sick. Take your douche and the baby killer pill and get the hell out of my sight. If he gave you AIDS, I just hope you haven't infected me." Laura started pleading with what she instantly discovered was a cold, stone wall, and then remembered that she'd also lost her car. When she lied, telling him that someone had stolen her car and that she'd had to get a ride home, he said, "You and your sex buddy, Ethan, were in such a hurry for him to get gone so I wouldn't see you getting out of his car that you didn't notice your car sitting in its parking space, did you? I had it picked up and brought back here, last Saturday, the day after you parked it in the back lot at Imberry Gardens APTs. I knew exactly where you left it, on Friday, less than a minute after he helped you pull your bag from your car and put it in his trunk, so I knew who you left with and I even have his car's plate number. Would you like to watch the video of you climbing all over him and kissing him? The way you were going at him. I'm surprised you didn't make him screw you on the hood of your car, right there in the parking lot. Just seeing the way you were acting. I knew that trip wasn't the first time the 2 of you had screwed each other. Not by a long shot. You screwed each other a dozen times or more before you planned that little getaway. And now you say your car was stolen, while you were up in no cell phone coverage country, too. You're a real sweetheart. And I'm the idiot who trusted you. The fool who loved you and was going to marry you next month, 3 weeks from now. I'm sorry, Ja. Shut the hell up, bitch. I said for you to get the hell out of my sight, and that is some very good advice. Take the douche with you. Have someone call and arrange to pick up your shit. I don't want to see you, and I don't want to hear your voice. Don't say another goddamned word. Just get out. Right now, before I get violent." A couple of months had passed, and one night, Ryan was finished having dinner with 2 friends in a restaurant. They were having coffee and talking when, out of nowhere, Laura approached him. Ryan looked at her coldly and told her to go away, that he didn't want to look at her or hear her voice. He was done, and so was she. Still pleading, she asked him for 5 minutes to talk and began apologizing for what she did, telling him that she'd made a terrible mistake, that she'd gotten carried away with the guy's line of bullshit. Since she was spewing their personal life in front of his 2 friends, Ryan coldly reminded her that good time Ethan had been allowed to enjoy screwing her several more times and had spent 2 more long weekends before he dumped her for another hot dumb bitch, just like her, and has already dumped her, too. And now she's on the outside looking at the divorce papers from the faithful husband that she was cheating on. Why don't you join up with her and start the DCBC? The Dumb Cheating Bitch Club? Then Ryan asked, but what if that a-hole hadn't dumped you or I hadn't found out about you screwing him? Would you even be here today, talking to me, apologizing for what you did? Hell, no you wouldn't. you'd still be sneaking around behind my back, screwing his brains out before coming home and telling me how much you love me, wouldn't you? Laura, I totally loved you. You know I did, but you went and killed us. I warned you a dozen times about that guy. Once while holding your shoulders and looking straight into your eyes, but you wanted to screw him, so you did it, and crushed me, and you killed us. I can't believe you have the gall to even come here today. After what you did, do you really think I'm stupid? You have to know that there's no way that I would ever trust you again. Not after what you did. I might not catch you, but I'd just be waiting for the next time you wanted to screw some guy who took your fancy. After getting caught, this time, I know you'd just be more careful to not get caught, but sooner or later, I'd catch you. As I see it, if you'd loved me to begin with, you would never have screwed him and taken a chance on losing me. And that is precisely what you did. You took a chance because what you were after was worth more to you than losing me was. You were willing to gamble on losing me and my love for you because he has lots of money, expensive cars, and no respect for anyone else's rights or property. You gave us up, what we had, for a chance at money and some wicked excitement. How does it feel to stand there and know that you're never going to be loved, held, screwed, and made love to by me again? Never. Not ever. Laura was sobbing pitifully as I continued. As much as I still love you and ache for you, I'll never put my heart, love, and trust at risk with you again. I can't afford to, and you don't deserve it. Even if I never caught you, I know that, sooner or later, you'd see a golden opportunity and use it to piss on me again. As Laura sat there weeping, Ryan said, I know I've done all the talking, but are the 5 minutes up yet? Yes. She barely choked out and then, in a broken voice, added, I'm so sorry, Ryan. I won't bother you again. Then she began to cry like a lost soul. Slowly, Ryan stood up from the table, apologized to his friends for leaving early, and, without looking back, walked away and out of the restaurant. In the early morning hours, for months later, Ethan's barely recognizable body was found draped over the edge of the dumpster behind a ritzy restaurant. The local news reported police officials as saying that he'd been viciously beaten to death and that early indications were that the vicious killing had been methodical and intentional, most likely done by a professional, because Mr. Richardson still had a thick roll of cash in his pocket, an expensive wristwatch, his cell phone, and a wallet filled with black and gold credit cards. Ethan had earned a reputation as a womanizer who didn't care whose girlfriend or wife he screws, but, because of who his family was and the power they wielded, had been one of the untouchables. As the news segment ended, the reporter solemnly stated, unfortunately, family wealth and power doesn't shield anyone from the Scarlet Judge. Ethan's murder was never solved, but, as a result of that newscast, it was commonly referred to as the Scarlet Judge killing. The third killing of the now famous serial killer. At the funeral home, there was one large black lily among all the flowers that were delivered with a card signed, S. Judge, that read, Ethan, you stand condemned, not by a court of law, but by the weight of the lives you've shattered. You preyed on trust, turned vows into lies, and left nothing but ruin in your wake. Only you and I know that I was the last to see you alive. And before your final breath, I asked you, was it worth it? Was breaking homes and hearts worth the price? Worth losing the decades you had left? Your death is not vengeance, it is justice. A sentence long overdue. Consider it the first installment of your debt. And as I looked into your eyes, I told you, this time, it's your turn to know what it feels like to be discarded, broken, and left with nothing. Goodbye, Ethan. Judgment has been passed. Ryan had parked his rental car on the outside of the cemetery gates and been standing there, watching the ceremony from the far side of the car. From his chosen location, he had a clear view to the burial plot. When the preacher had finished with his pious once upon a times, Ryan's eyes stayed focused on the box until it disappeared into the ground. With a smile as grim and as cold as his eyes, he thought, I wonder if she ever told him to buy that pair of running shoes. After what happened to Ethan, I wonder if she's thinking of buying a pair for herself. But on the other side of the grave, another figure stood motionless, his face unreadable in the dim light. Unlike Ryan, he had the closest view of the man being lowered into the earth, a silent witness to the final moments of Ethan's existence. As the last shovelful of dirt slipped from his hands, he lingered for just a moment, staring at the freshly covered grave as if engraving the scene into his memory. Then, without a word, he turned, disappearing into the background. Somewhere out there, another name was already etched into his mind. Another debt to be collected. Another sentence to be passed. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.